Hey everyone, I'm Cathy Moya. I'm a senior customer experience program manager at Microsoft. I have been there 22 years and I've worked on lots of different stuff. Most of my time there has been in endpoint management in the IT pro space. So systems management server, configuration manager, Intune, Microsoft Endpoint Manager, all of its incarnations. But I found virtual reality when COVID hit and my world changed, and I won't say I will never go back, but I really believe that immersive experiences are the way for us to connect in the future. It will never replace being there in person. And when I was little growing up, we had some commercials from a long distance company back when long distance was a thing, that we actually talked about and had, advertisements about. And the ad was long distance, the next best thing to being there. And I really believe now that immersive experiences are the next best way of being there. It's not going to replace in person, but what we can do with immersive experiences is bring people into something that feels a lot like real life. And what we have done with Microsoft's implementation of these immersive experiences is we have this product that is fully integrated into Microsoft Teams. Now, it's probably not going to work right now because we don't have guest access enabled yet. Actually, I do have the menu. So we have a couple of pieces here. One of them is that I could go and turn on my avatar, and I'm not going to do that right now just because sometimes bandwidth and sometimes it slows things down. But if you have the option, you can bring up your avatar and have it interact with people. And then if you want to take that avatar off of just this kind of, flat gallery mode that we're doing, you can actually take it into an entirely different view in what we call immersive space. And that's built into all of your regular Teams meetings, as long as you have a commercial SKU. So we're talking E3, E5, but even things like Business Basic, it's like $6 a month or something like that. We do not have EDU at this time. We know that that's something that people want a lot. We do not have government, so GCC is not supported at this time. We know that they tend to kind of lag in adoption. And we don't have frontline worker because we don't really see this as something that your average frontline person is going to be in there and doing. You want them engaging with the frontline, with the customers. But this is something that, would be for the people in the organization supporting in the back end. And all of that just built really easily into Teams. But then we also have a standalone version of this experience, which is in a separate app at this point. And it allows you to do a lot of customization, including potentially completely custom environments that you build in Unity and then bring into Mesh. And so this is a much larger types of events, a lot richer experience, especially for presenters. And so that is part of the Teams Premium. And so digging in a little bit to each of these experiences. So the avatar is something you can see now that we have a new ability to create them from photos. So this is something that is, I'm actually not sure if it's still just in public preview or if it's finally fully released. But you can either upload a photo or take a photo from your webcam like this is showing right here. And then it will actually take that and turn it into your avatar, and you can still do some adjustments with it. So it's a nice way to get off camera for a bit. I've had customers say, oh yeah, Friday I'm done with being on camera. Friday is my all avatar day. And I've also heard people say, yeah, I don't really see myself represented as I am physically, but with my avatar, I can be more of who I see myself as being. So one piece that's built completely into Teams, again, with those business licenses. But then if you're going to take this into 3D space, and over in the, here, I'll get my laser pointer out. Over here in the first picture, we show that you can go up to the view menu and say immersive space. Now, at this point, Mesh does not support any type of guest access. And we will have guest access coming. But at this point, like I have it on my menu, but if I were to go in, I think I would just end up in a room by myself, or if there were any other Microsoft people, I might end up being able to see them. Ideally, the point is going to be when we have full guest access, people will be able to go into the same immersive space together from different organizations. Okay, so Callahan is asking about EDU. Kids and young adults would benefit from immersive spaces. They're pretty native in 3D. Absolutely, but we need a lot more controls before we turn them loose in an environment like this. Yeah, dealing with kids is a lot more complexity and moderation requirements. So, obviously it's something that we know. Camera isn't available in the wild, at least not experience. Okay, so it's probably still in private or public preview then, but it's definitely available publicly if you can get turned on to the public preview process. All avatar days sounds like a great idea. Yeah, it really can be. Or even just saying, okay, this meeting with my team, we're going to do all avatars. And one of the reasons I particularly like that approach is because then when people go to join an immersive space, they just click view immersive space and they don't have to stop and create an avatar. Now, if they don't have an avatar, we'll let you pick one off the rack. Everybody kind of has a different approach in the different platforms of how you get your avatar if you don't have one yet. And we just have a whole bunch representing a lot of different nationalities, body types, everything. But having it pre-created is really going to speed things in here. And I've onboarded people to a lot of different platforms. When I found VR, I just went all in and was trying everything and was trying events on a bunch of different stuff. And really, nobody can match how easy this is. It's 2 clicks and you're in. Now that's assuming you have your avatar set up. And yeah, the first time there's some legal stuff and there's a little tutorial that they can go through, but it is the easiest onboarding. Yeah, I remember events where Altspace where 80% had the default avatar. Yeah, after we got the avatar refresh, there was one with a blue shirt with white polka dots, and it had kind of a non-genderish haircut, and it was basically nondescript intentionally. And so I like the mesh approach of being able to say, okay, your default, just pick one of these, and then you can go in. And like in Altspace, in mesh, you can change your avatar while the meeting is progressing. So I try to let people know that that's possible. So you'll see them pop in as a default avatar, and suddenly they have a hat, and their face changes, and the hair changes. So the nice thing about being in these immersive spaces in Teams, besides just that you're already in Teams, it's so easy to get in. We have a couple different environments, and new, let's get my laser pointer back here, the workshop down here is something that just started showing up. I think last week was the first time I saw it in what I think are completely public builds. So that's a nice space. It has a big kind of an amphitheater, and then it has 4 separate breakout room areas that you can go into. And then from the beginning, we've had Lake House, and Lake House has a lot of built-in activities. So you have roasting marshmallows, you have beanbag toss, and there's a sound sculpture, there's a radio that you can turn on. So there are a lot of interesting things that you can do it, and there are a lot of separate areas. So we find this is a really good space to start it. Oh, and there's even an icebreaker game kind of thing. You can touch it and it'll bring up icebreaker questions for you. And then Oasis actually has 2 different versions. So this is the large version that you're seeing here. There's actually a smaller space that doesn't have some of the outside areas. And the nice thing about that is you can change the seating arrangements around quite a bit so that you can have little work tables, or you can have this big theater space, or you can have a big horseshoe crescent. The other nice thing about doing events in this Teams extension here is that we have an audio zone inside, the Oasis, the Lake House, et cetera. There's like a purple zone. And as long as you stay inside that purple zone, everybody who is still in the gallery mode can hear everything. And that means also that the parts of Teams that are transcribing, captioning, recording can hear everything. Audio is not as spatialized in there. There's a little bit of attenuation. So if you go further away from someone inside the zone, you'll still hear them, but they may be just a little bit fainter, just to give you that sense of distance. But we want to make sure everybody can hear everybody in that zone, and also everybody still in gallery mode can hear. And then if you step outside, that's where it's fully spatialized. But trying to record that would be like trying to record a wedding reception. You record the wedding, that's easy because it's one thing happening, all the actions up there. But when you go out and everybody's talking and dancing and whatever, so it's still possible to send somebody in who is recording, like with Camtasia or whatever, OBS. But then it's like my point of view as the cameraman about which conversations I'm going to listen into. So If you want to do larger events, if you want to do any kind of customization, which we aren't at this point offering customization in the View Immersive Space option. So we can now get up to 330 people. That's also new this month. And what we do is a little bit of smoke and mirrors, like a lot of platforms do this. So we have a presenter room where everybody who is an organizer can be there, and then they have full access to all the presenter controls. And then we have duplicates of rooms. So it's like when you go to Ignite and the first conference room is full, so you're not in the same room as Satya, you're in the next room and they're just piping the video in. Except here, people don't really realize that they're in a separate room. Actually, they do now, because we have a little bit of stuff just at the bottom of the screen. So right down here, just below their menu, it'll say what room they're in. And I find that that's nice. So I joined one of Christian Glessner's I Love Mesh events. And I realized there's only one other person in here. Oh, we must be the first people. And then I realized, no, we're in room 2. There are 16 other people in the other room. And it breaks it down in groups of 16, which works pretty well. We are definitely working to increase that. 16 is not where we plan to stop, obviously. But the nice thing about that is there is a no code editor for event organizers. And I am somebody, I used to say I can barely spell Unity on a good day. And I've actually improved my Unity skills now, where I'm never going to create something from scratch. That's just not what I do, both in the graphics and in the coding. But you give me an environment that already exists, and I can tweak the heck out of that sucker. So I've done a little bit in our Unity toolkit that we have available. I have taken some of our existing environments and I've done modifications to them to make them more like what I would want, like putting up a wall somewhere so that I can put more display stuff, or blocking off a space that I don't want people to go into. But you don't have to be able to do that. We have this no-code customizer. Incidentally, I did discover recently we can put in images. So that's just a PNG or JPEG file. And if you have the image displayed, it is collidable, meaning it will stop people from going in. So I'm doing one event right now, getting ready for it next Wednesday, where we're going to have kind of a ribbon cutting on this exhibit. And so I'm going to start with an image that blocks off the rest of the exhibit. And then after the welcome, and we'll do kind of a countdown, 3, 2, 1, and then we'll make that image invisible in Mesh using the host control panel. And as soon as it's invisible, people will be able to walk through it. So, fun things that you can do experimenting with this. Let's see. So yeah, currently it is at M365, or it's a Windows Store app, and it's also available in Quest. You can also use Quest to get into the Teams experience. It's the same app for both. So if you just have regular core licensing, but not Teams Premium, you would only see your Teams meetings listed there. And you should see all of your Teams meetings. If you don't, it's a bug, file it. But then if you also have the Teams Premium, you can go to the web portal on a PC or Mac, it's a web portal, create your event. And then when you go into the event, you'll on your headset, you'll be able to see it listed in the dashboard. Mesh hack, yes. And integrating with M365, Portal, Enter ID, this is all there. When you go to upload your pictures or your videos that you want to put into your space, those all have to be stored in either SharePoint or OneDrive for Business. So when you create a Mesh collection to store any environments that you want to use or templates that you want to use, that's actually an M365 group. We just use it a little bit specially for collections there. And all of the Enter ID, now I put the little asterisk on here because currently, as I mentioned, we only support single tenant. So all the stuff that I've been doing for the last solid year, I've been running events in Mesh, even though we just went to general availability in January. I've been running them internally for a year. And so it's only been within our own company, but we have announced that in October, we do plan to allow guest access. And I'll show you later how to look at the roadmap. You definitely want to take a look at some of the fine print on that one. It's going to be a phased approach here. So the first installment that we're expecting in October of 2024, people will have to actually have a guest account in your Entra ID tenant. So for example, Vesa and Maddie, MVPs, they have accounts in our Microsoft.com using their own email addresses. So that's something that you have to set up either through SharePoint or Teams by saying, hey, I want to send you an invitation, or you can actually go direct into Entra and create accounts. I don't know if you've ever tried that, but it is actually possible to create a guest account if you have access to Entra. And then once they have that guest account, I did get them to make sure we specified this in the messaging. It was updated from the original release on the public roadmap. They will have to have either mesh licensing at that point. So that would be either Teams Premium or the free 6-month trial that we have available for mesh. And as long as they have that, then they'd be able to come into my events. So we know that's a little bit of a hurdle at first. Obviously, we're not going to stop there. There's more stuff coming, but in that first incarnation, that's what we're looking for. Does the personal MS account work for guest access? No, because it would have to have that Teams Premium or the mesh trial. So it's got to come from some kind of a corporate, commercial Entra ID tenant. How we can allow external users to require special licensing. Well, it's not special licensing, it's mesh licensing, but like I said, we're not stopping there. This is the first installment of what we're getting. So I intend to run with that. For all you MVPs out there, I'm working with our MVP org to hold a watch party for MVPs at Ignite coming up in November, because we figure you guys either have the licenses or we'll figure out getting you the licenses. There are going to be a lot of ways that you'll be able to join this. So I'm checking the chat here. Any other questions about this before we go on? So good to start. Yeah, the 6-month trial, at least get the experience. And, we had to do something. We're putting a lot of work into this. We can't give it away completely for free, even though we know we need to drive adoption. So 6 months free is pretty good. That's actually unheard of for a Microsoft trial right now. Usually if you want the Teams Premium trial, it's like 30 days. Interestingly enough, another thing I found out about the Teams trial, there is actually, it is possible for users to sometimes initiate a personal trial of Teams Premium for themselves if the admin for the org has not blocked it. So we have a couple of entry points that there'll be a little thing that'll pop up there that'll say, hey, try Teams Premium. And if they, if the admin hasn't blocked that, they'll see this try Teams Premium and they'll get it for a month. And with that would be good enough to come and join an event. So, some different approaches. All right. So we mentioned, the Entra ID, the M365. This is something that we have heard time and time again from our customers, especially customers in our technical adoption program, that there are a lot of great platforms out there. And I am the first to say that there are platforms that are absolutely years ahead of where mesh is in terms of feature set. They've been out there a long time. They've been doing great things. But are you going to be able to use it in your company? I know I've been through the process of actually trying to get another 3D platform approved for use with inside Microsoft, and they could not meet our internal standards and they gave up. So, even with Microsoft, sometimes we've heard customers are having to go through hoops to get things like this adopted, but at least starting from all of this is definitely something that we have heard is helpful. And we've had people say, yeah, I've been kind of waiting for yours to come to the point where we can start doing it because I need all of this from my security people. Would have been thrilled to allow people to test without licenses. We will get there. Not saying anything about when, but obviously that would be where we would like to go long term. Will there be floating licenses for enterprise? Well, so the licenses just have to be assigned. And so licensing strategy is something of an art in itself. I will tell you, it took me about 3 weeks to get mesh turned on inside of all Microsoft once we were approved for that, because we have all sorts of different license plans and things going on in here. So, however your licenses work, just at the time that somebody is going to receive the invitation for the event, and this is actually probably an important fine point here, they have to have the appropriate license. So we have some demo tenants through something called CDX. Some of our, I think our MVPs also have access to that. And so I could set up, for example, a demo But if I want to have more than my 10 licenses I get in that tenant, I may have to shift them around. But if they don't have the overall core M365 license at the time I assign the event, they won't get the event on their calendar and they won't be able to join. So if they didn't have a license and then I add one, then I have to go back and get them the event again, and then they'll be able to join it. So hope that makes sense. You can float your licenses around however you want, but just make sure that they've got it. Licenses have to be personal. I don't know what personal means in that context. So, this is a corporate license that is being assigned to a user inside that Entra ID tenant. But if you mean something different, Fritzell, let me know. All right, so now I'm going to kind of shift gears. You kind of know what mesh is if you didn't already, and I know some of you are the faithful, and thank you, all of you who've been out there like really using this and really doing things with it. If I'm going to start a mesh event, the first thing that I always ask people is, what are your goals for the event? And I'm actually going to say this is any type of event. And we have a lot of different events that we can run using Microsoft technology or even in person. What do I want people to get out of this? And kind of at the end, we'll say, how will I know if I met those goals? But the second thing, if I'm going to be doing this in an immersive environment, is why? Just saying, hey, we're going to do this in mesh because we can is not a good enough reason. So I need to think about what is going to be added by bringing this into a 3D space. And I'll give you some kind of, some frameworks to think about in a minute here. What can I do in here that I can't do anywhere else? And how am I going to make this a unique experience from what I can do in basic teams? Then we get into a real practical question of how many people. So we mentioned the one that's built into the View immersive space. That can only hold 16 people total. But that does not mean that I have not used it for larger events. And I'll tell you a couple things that I do with this. So one approach is to say, before we had Teams breakout rooms where you could just say, go as the meeting owner and say, put people in breakout rooms. What did we do? We scheduled multiple Teams meetings at the same time. And we said, okay, Maddie and Vescu and Torsten, you're going to room 1, and Adam and Rick and Nima, you're going to room 2, and Amber and you're going to, just divide everybody up and give them the link, and then they go and join that other meeting, and then maybe they come back to the main meeting. You can absolutely do that with the Teams immersive space. Now, there are breakout rooms built into Teams, as I said, but don't try to use the View immersive space if you're also using those breakout rooms. We did that in one of my events, and it was not good. So, like perf wise, there are too many things going on there. So I always do it now with separate things. And so, for example, our new employee orientation that we've done at Microsoft, we've done after parties where, we get through all the regular stuff in Teams, but then, we start off in that same Teams meeting, but then we say, okay, you 16, you're going to this room, you 16, you're going to that room. And then we have facilitators in each room, and we have an agenda, and we have activities, and we do them all. And then usually we just kind of end in that room. So that's like our little after party social experience there. And it's nice because, again, we have the built-in stuff like the marshmallows and things, and we have activities in there. The other thing that I've done, we have a machine learning and data science conference internally at Microsoft. And so I guess it was last November I did the first one. Spring, I think it had been November I did one. And I thought I'd be lucky to get like 15, 16 people total. I had 85 people show up for that event. And that's fine because I had people already in the immersive space. And we did this more as a meet mesh event. So it was really all about experiencing it, but we did it as kind of an open house kind of flow through thing. So I had a screen presentation. I stayed in gallery view the whole time, but I had people in immersive space, one inside the audio zone and a couple outside the audio zone. So people, as I was talking, could just transition in. And if the room was full, if the immersive space was full, they would just get a message. And then, when some other people had moved on, then new people could join in, and they could go and they could still hear me in this space. If they wanted to stop listening to me, they could go outside of the zone and they could talk to the people there. They could have their little side conversations. So that's a totally valid event design, though I would tend to use it specifically for events that are trying to orient people to mesh. If you want to do things like office hours where people can come and experience it, but I do try then to make sure I'm staffing the gallery view, the audio zone and immersive view, and the the spatial audio, exterior zones in the immersive space. Now, another way that I've done this is sometimes you have people who just can't go into immersive space for some reasons. So that could be, various types of accessibility and adaptive technology. But it also, like I met one woman who has what is called cyber sickness. And this is not the VR sick, like she was not going in headsets even. That really would have messed her up. But even things like whiteboards, where you're zooming around a large space on the screen quickly, can make her feel nauseated. And so she has to be very careful about the kinds of online experiences she goes to. So it's a thing, you can go look it up, cybersick. So when we were planning an event that we knew that she would be attending, we really stopped and thought about, how do we design this event? And so one possibility is you can design the event so that maybe we're going to have 3 breakout rooms, but one of them is always going to stay inside that audio zone. And that way, then the people in the gallery can still hear the people in the audio zone and vice versa. And you can do the same icebreaker questions, or you could think about doing activities as long as they aren't going to need that kind of spatialization, that physicalization within the space. And then we would have another group over in the library and another group over at the fire pit, and maybe even another group if we needed over by the beanbag toss. And those groups outside the audio zone would all be spatialized so they could be doing their conversations at the same time, but still allowing as many people as can fit in a Teams meeting to participate in the experience in some way. Now, I did another event where we decided, we need to have an alternate experience for various reasons. And we did not want to restrict the experience we were providing inside the immersive view so that it would still work for people who are in gallery. So we decided to just have a completely separate event or separate experience happening for people who were still in the meeting but not going into immersive space. And then we had a couple different rooms where we were doing the same immersive activities and divided people among those. So it was really a choose your own adventure situation where we said, hey, go do this over here if you want. If you want to be in the immersive space, that's great. But if you don't, for any reason, then just go over here. And we had a completely different, and some people, Winu picked that just because they wanted that experience, even though they had nothing against going into immersive space. So don't limit the kinds of activities you're doing just because you say, we only have the core license and we have to do this in immersive view. There are still ways that you can bring more than 16 people together in different ways. Obviously, if you have more than 16 and you want them all in immersive space, then yeah, go do the separate mesh experience there. That can get up to the 330, even though we're dividing it across rooms. But even then, I have to stop and think about, what are my goals for the event? So if I want to do a social event and I'm going to have 200 people and they're going to be spread across rooms, I still have to think about the kind of experience that's going to be. So for example, we did a social for women of E&D, our enterprise and devices division here that I'm part of. And we wanted it to be a social, we wanted it to be a mixer, but we knew we were going to have more than 16 people. At least we hoped we were, and we did. So we designed the event so that we would have activities that would just happen kind of within the rooms. Now, at that point, it was a little bit difficult to get a facilitator in each room, but on our roadmap, if you go to AKMS M365 roadmap, you can search for mesh as the keyword, and that will show you that room hop is one of the things that we have coming up on our roadmap. And I've used it internally, total game changer for my events, I promise you. So usually what happens if you're running a multi-room event, when you configure the event, you have to pick, is it single, meaning you're only ever going to have 16, or is it going to be more? And then as anybody who is an organizer, anyone who created the event or anybody who is listed as a co-organizer on the event always joins the host room. And then everybody else starts filling up room 1, and then room 1 gets full, and then we start filling up room 2. When that's full, we start filling up room 3. So we definitely have a lot of things in mind to optimize all of these kinds of experiences. But the first one that we have released is called Room Hop, which means my hosts do not have to stay in that host room. And that's huge. So, a social I did a couple weeks ago, I was able to create the event, but then I was able to just room hop into any room number that I wanted, and then I could talk to whoever was in those rooms. And so that would have been a game changer for my E&D Women's Social event, as it was. And until you get this, what you do is you have to have a couple people standing by as your allies in this, and you make them attendees, not organizers, and you just watch as the room fills up, which is a lot easier now that we have everybody in your room. You can get a view of how many people are in your room. So when that room starts to get up to 16, leave the event, hopefully a few more people join, and then when you join again, you can look and see what room you're in. And as long as you're in room 2, then okay, as new people join, they're going to be joining in your room. And then when that's full, hopefully somebody else can jump in, leave and jump in, and they'll end up in room 3. But once you get the room hopping, which should be coming in, I think we said November on that one, you'll just be able to say, great, I'm going to put a facilitator in room 1, another facilitator is going to jump to room 2, and we will have people greet as people arrive here. So let me look at the list here. Okay, so going back to Fritzell's question, can we create non-personal accounts and assign mesh licenses to them and share them to people? So it's your Entra ID. You can do anything you want. So Christian Glessner, with his I Love Mesh tenant, he has hosted public events where he has put the call out on LinkedIn, or there's a Facebook group where he invited people in there. And that's, he can do anything you want with that. Now, I am not going to be able to create an account at Microsoft.com for anybody who is not employed at Microsoft and gone through all the background checks and everything else. So it's just really up to your tenant. You can create the tenant, or you can use your existing tenant. As long as you get a license to that, or, create an account there and put a license on it, that's fine. Yeah, one problem with that solution is sometimes you'll have like account 1, account 2. Yeah, we were demoing at the Augmented World Expo, AWE, and yeah, we had demo tenants. So I was in there with an account that was, Cathy at demo tenant 1 whatever, and then everybody was coming in as, demo user 1, demo user 2. We didn't know what their names were unless they wanted to tell us. So yeah, it's a little disconcerting, but can totally happen. And by the way, that was also in the Teams immersive view that we were doing that. So we did kind of a virtual booth experience. I was staffing the booth, sitting in my craft room here in Redmond, and people at AWE were hopping in and talking to me. It's a thing. You can do it. Callahan says, I have attendees who are on touch screens, and yeah, Mesh doesn't support touch screen service. Yeah, you really kind of need the the mouse and the arrows moving around. So they stayed in gallery, and yeah, that's an option. With 330 participants, does a limit of 16 remain for each room? Yes, at this time, obviously I said we don't want to stop there, but at this time it is still 16 per room, and the 330 does include that host room. I checked. Let's see, if those accounts are licensed, user might feel weird having another account to log in. Yeah, and the naming. Yeah, so, like joining Christian's I Love Mesh, what he does is he sets up a form, and he has a great blog post about this, of how he set this up. So people will go and fill out the form and give him their name and the email address. He will create an account at ilovemesh.com and send it to their actual email address, so they'll have the credentials, and then they have to log in with their, Cathy at ilovemesh.com account. Just like you had to keep it a separate account for AltSpace or for Frame or for Engage, whatever other platforms. So people can kind of set up Mesh and use it like, a platform to host other events out there. And they're taking care of all the licensing on that one. So those are some thoughts on how I deal with people. And, I was a theater major in college. I was not a computer science major. So for me, I think of these as creative restraints. Anytime you're doing a theatrical production, there's always going to be some limitation that you have. So how do I get around it? If you go to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, they used to have a theater there that had this big support pillar that was built into one of the spaces they used that used to be an auto showroom. And it was always the thing, how are they going to get around the pillar in this space? Now, then when they were able to design a whole new theater, they didn't have to design around the pillar. But, it can make you very creative in how you approach things. So then the last thing I think about when I'm planning an event is how am I going to measure success? And I will tell you quite honestly, right now, until we reach a tipping point where going into an immersive event is as common as being in an event like this in Teams with, with video, whatever. My usual goal for success is, did people have conversations with each other? Were they able to get in and were they able to have conversations with each other? And if they can do that right now, I consider my events a success. I hit a really low bar at first. Maybe if I'm doing something else, like I've worked with various learning and development groups inside of Microsoft to be using this. And then we also have, whatever their success measures are for their standard curriculum. And I'll tell you, we did this with one group inside Microsoft, and their standard questions were significantly higher in rating just from having one of their sessions move from Teams Breakout into Mesh. It just lit things up. So find, small approachable ways you can start to do this. I strongly recommend against starting with, we are going to go out and spend, I don't know, thousands and thousands of dollars to build a completely customized environment and have our CEO come and do this all hands in Mesh. And that's going to be the first immersive experience that we ever do. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying if you're going to do something like that, you probably want to hire a company that does that. And we have several listed on our documentation site, people who've been in our early adopter programs. And, I can't endorse any of those by name, but go look there. There are people who have experience and they will make that event a success for you. But if you're going to try to do that without ever having done any kind of immersive stuff, you're really going to be swimming uphill. Start small. Start with things like, get their avatars up, then get them going into Teams Immersive View, then think about bringing up the separate app experience and doing a lot of customization. So let's see. I just want to say I'm planning. Okay. So I'm still kind of noodling this out. And the next session that I'm going to do at 9 a.m., still in the same room, is going to be about community. And I'd really like people, if you can stick around, I want to have some conversations about how we think about event design. So one of the other things that I did at Microsoft for a couple of years, I worked on our mice and keyboards. So like I helped design, not, design this mouse specifically, but I helped design the overall experience and the educational materials that went along with this, looking at the out-of-box experience, et cetera. So, and then I also in college, I said I was a theater major. Well, we had to study design at UCLA. So I did theatrical design, set design, lighting design, costume design, sound design. Like we did everything. And so I'm bringing some of that as I'm thinking about my event design. And I've also designed events, in-person events, Teams events. For Intune, we did a 24-hour round-the-clock marathon using Teams Live events. After the first Ignite, when we weren't getting enough educational airtime, so we just designed our own very deep content. And so I think of all of this as I'm bringing my design experience into 3D. And the first thing that I'm kind of thinking about is my event going to be more presentational or more interactional? And I'm saying that if you're going to do it strictly presentational without any kind of interaction, you may just want to stay in Teams for that. Teams has a lot of stuff, and we're building out the Teams portfolio of events all the time. And it's great for presentational where I am talking, you are all listening. So usually if I'm going to do it in Mesh, going back to what are my goals and why am I doing this in Mesh, I'm probably going to be trying to move it, at least a little bit closer down here to make it a bit more interactional. But I also find, just saying completely interactional, I'm just going to throw people into a space and I'm not going to talk to them at all. That can be awkward. So going back to the Women of E&D mixer that I did, actually, I didn't do this. I helped with my teammate, Amanda Billings, did the whole event with me, just kind of sitting on the sidelines and coaching her through it, because I think that's also an important experience. I need to see how other people are doing this. But one of the things I warned her about is, hey, if we just throw people in there, room 2 may not have anybody who's going to actually kick off the icebreaker. So now that we can have the organizer's room hop as you get that experience, and you can have somebody in there to start off the thing, then I might be able to just make each room kind of independently interactional. But what we had to do is at least a little bit of presentation so that everybody in the rooms could kind of hear that coming over the broadcast. Amanda could put herself on broadcast, and then she could be seen across all of the rooms of 16 people. But what you have to worry about then is, or at least, consider in your event design, is it becomes what I call the airport announcement phenomenon. You're standing there trying to have a conversation with your traveling buddy, and all of a sudden that loudspeaker comes on about now boarding gate 16, and you can't talk until the announcement is done. That's what happens in a multi-room event when you're trying to use it for these social things, is anytime somebody comes on broadcast to be heard across all of the rooms, then it's going to obliterate whatever social activity is happening there. So as we get room hop rolled out, like total game changer, now I can just have an organizer hop into a room. They can use the megaphone just locally within that space and not have to be on broadcast. And then everybody just in the space can hear them, like, okay, we're done with this icebreaker, now it's time to come back. And they can kind of self-organize along that access. The other access that I think about a lot is, and I don't have a good way yet of describing this. I'm trying this out here. If you could think of better ways, especially in the next session, let's talk about this. Agenda-based versus environment-based. So we ran a holiday party where Hololux was kind enough to let us use their Meshmas environment. And if you didn't get a chance to see this, they did run a public event. This is one of the things they did with their I Love Mesh tenant. You came into this beautiful winter wonderland, and there was bowling at the top, and then you kind of walked down a little ramp, and there was a present hunt where if you found enough of the presents, you could jump into Santa's sleigh and take a ride where you could get the aerial view of everything. There was a cannon where you could fire ornaments at trees and decorate them. There were photo booths. There was hot cocoa that you could sip. And then they had a snowman village where you could go and build snowmen by making the snowballs bigger or smaller and then attaching things. It was extraordinary. And so I think of that like I think about Disneyland. Disneyland is phenomenal, or any theme park, where you're going to go. All the experiences are just built right in there. And you could just say, hey, the experience is open. People can go in, and it's up to them if they go in alone or if they go in groups. But even nudging it a little bit over here, like my agenda-based, I didn't just set that up and say, great, here's the party, go check it out, right? I put some agenda around it because I wanted to have a moment where people were going into this space together. Because it's about that connection, right? This whole title of this session is Building Connection. So we had a trivia competition in there, even though I didn't necessarily need it because we already had the presents, but I wanted to get people interacting with each other. And we had a snowman building contest. So you could just build the snowman, but by me adding a little bit of agenda of the contest around it, that's raising the stakes. I think we also did some other scavenger hunt kind of things in addition to just the present scavenger hunt. And we did that real time in the event, like the first person who could go, and I think it was counting how many something were in there. I forget what it was. And then coming back, and then real time in the event, we announced a winner. So if you have the capability to build an extraordinary custom environment like that one, or if you can have somebody, build it for you, they can do I'm sure they will let you use that for the right price there if you talk to them. That's great. Another environment-based thing that we were able to do when we built out our new East Campus area, we were able to actually get all of the Unity files that had somehow been built for that. We don't know who exactly along the way paid for all that and what they were using it for in the process. But my teammate, Eric Haver, built out from those Unity files the entire new Microsoft East Campus, and you can go and walk around the outside. He also built an inside of Building 3, which is where our team was moving into. So before we even set foot in that building, Eric had built that out for us, and I was able to go find my desk. We did a couple of events as part of our Friday self-host events where we found our desks. We did some things like relay races around the space there. So even though we had the environment, I was still putting some agenda around it. And that's phenomenal if you can get the digital twin. And then we also had the Thermal Energy Center Unity environment. And so Kale on our team was able to build out, take that, and he built in signage, he built in some teleporters with Eric's help. And he ran some of those events just as drop-in. where people could just, kind of go and just, walk around the space there, no presentation. But he also ran some where he had one of the experts of the Thermal Energy Center there who could give people a tour of the space. And so that was, we couldn't just do that in one of the default spaces. But, I'm also someone, I did a lot of creative dramatics as part of my theater degree. If you give me an empty room and a microphone so people can hear me, I will come up with something I can do in that empty room. And so that's what I think about with our default environments that we provide. And so I'm actually going to jump ahead. No, actually I have them over here. Let's see, back to, so these environments here, these are the defaults. And I can do stuff in there, especially now that I can customize them. I can put up images, text, videos. We will add other things that you will be able to add into these environments. Can't talk about roadmap stuff there. But just even putting up signage, if I want to do table topics, which I've done, saying, okay, people who are going to talk about this topic are going to be here, and this topic's going to be this other part of the room. And I can even just spread them around a room like this. Or now that we have the workshop, I told Vesa that I haven't actually run an event in workshop yet because I just haven't had access to it until recently. But if I was going to do table topics, I would absolutely use each of these little breakout rooms. And then there are 2 more on the other side. And I would just put a sign up here on the green that says, great, topic 1 here. Come to this room. So we could all meet in the standard area. There's a little screen up here. We could screen share to it and then send people off. All right. So where was I? Okay. So, that's the kind of framework that I'm thinking of. Would love to talk more about this and just kind of event theory, event design. So these are the kind of things I've read. I've read lots of different, because my full-time job has really been getting people inside and outside of Microsoft to use it. But I was one of the people owning inside. So we did the holiday celebration. I've done lots of trivia contests, lots of different types of trivia, some really cool ones coming up. Socials, a lot of educational and cultural exhibits, demos. And so really, I just go back to what are my goals? What am I trying to, why am I doing this in Mesh? And I come up with things. So I can show you a couple of these, because this one was actually, this is not a picture of the actual event. This is a picture that's up on our blog post. So I knew it was okay to show this one. But we actually very kindly from Edward Zemba at Link to VR got access to the Mercy Ships event. And we had someone from Mercy Ships come on in a panel with Edward. And I can't remember if Regina was there. We had a couple people from Link to VR. And Dell actually, sponsored this whole environment to be built. And so we did a panel in there, and then we did a foot race. So you had to start at the back of the ship and run all the way and end up here, kind of up where the big antenna was. So people had to figure out how to do that, and we said I think we said without teleporting. And then I had a scavenger hunt that I was able to turn on where they had to find letters all around the ship, and then they had to assemble those letters. And then I also had a lot of posters and banners in there talking about what Mercy Ship is and why people might want to donate to it. That was really fun. So that was last October. So like I said, I've been running these events, for a while here. So then this is not the actual Meshmas event that I ran. I already talked about this one. This is a picture that was also on our public blog site. So I know I was okay to use this one. So they had this Meshmas environment. You can see people sipping cocoa in there. It was fantastic. But also, so I did not design this one, but I consult on all of these and, definitely keep my fingers in. Our team admin, Ashley Anton Giovanni did this, and it was right after the Northern Lights had come through. So we had this beautiful pictures of Aurora Borealis from people on our team, that had taken them locally. And then she and I think Tanisha Chan was also in there putting in the spaceships, the little green men. We had a photo booth here because you can use transparent graphics, so people could stand behind the astronaut. You'd see their face in there. And this was my absolute favorite. They had the spaceship and a little cow that it was tractor beaming up. I just thought that was hysterical. And that was all done without any Unity at all, unlike the first two that had custom environments. These were default environments. This was visual assets that actually was going out, Tanisha was going out and finding and bringing into this space. The reason I was thinking about Ashley first is she told me she's one of those people who loves decorating games, like the apps where you like decorate a living room or something. And she took to Mesh like a duck to water. She's done really brilliant things in there. And then kind of the last thing that I'll wrap up to get the end. I got the idea of taking our science building exhibit space that is in our Mesh toolkit. And I said, boy, this is great, but I want to get rid of all the physics. Can we do that? And our design team said, Yeah, that's actually not hard at all. And they showed me how to do it, and they delivered this to me at first, but I know how to do this now where I can just go in and I can remove things really easily in Unity. It's like, click on this, I don't want it. Okay, inactivate, gone. And then just, build it, upload it. So I started with the Women's History Museum, and Amanda Billings also helped me with this. And all of our employee resource groups at Microsoft, we went to Blacks at Microsoft and Ola and military at Microsoft. And we said, who should we know about? Who are women in women's history we should know about? And so they created their decks, gave them to us. Amanda and I turned the decks into PNGs. We went and we just posted them around the space. Done. And that was pretty simplistic. But then Sophia Obamajay on our team, who was also part of Blacks at Microsoft, saw that and went, I want to do this for Juneteenth. And so she took that same space. She did a little bit of changing, just like the blue has changed to yellow over here to make the sky was a little sunnier. And she got things like from the Microsoft art collection to put in there. These are actual things that Microsoft art pieces Microsoft owns. And she has a much more better visual design sense than I do. She created beautiful interactions here. And we brought people in, and it was educational about Juneteenth. Well, then some people from Hola Marketing, our Hispanic group, came in and said, wow, we love this. We want to do this for National Hispanic Latino Heritage Month. Can we do that? And I said, yes, I'm actually Latina. Let me help you with that one. So on the 25th, that's when we're going to be doing this another exhibit in a different space. I was able to get access to a different space that I was able to build out with just like my very limited Unity skills and put together. And it's going to have all sorts of things about Latino, Latinx, Hispanic culture that we're going to be able to wander through. So if you're looking for a way to get this started in your environment, start with your employee resource groups. Two reasons. One, they tend to have people who are really into this. And like, if I didn't have Sophia driving this, I was helping her, but she drove the whole thing. And on the Ola one, Ola Marketing is absolutely in there giving me all the content. Now I'm going to handle like the logistical stuff of it, because we're trying a few of our new logistical things in here. But get somebody who's really not, who wants to do the event, and then I partner with them to handle the mesh pieces of it and see how they use it and see what evolves. And you just get some brilliant things happening when you start bringing all these creative minds together in these spaces. And the other great thing about starting with your employee resource groups is they tend to be spread across the company. So you're getting a super spreader, like in a good way, like a dandelion effect, like those little dandelion seeds go out there and people go, oh, I want to do that. So it's a great way to start. And the other thing is people will go over the hassle to get into the event for the first time if it's something they really want, like, oh, yeah, I'm Hispanic, I want to go into this Hispanic event. They'll, if there are any bumps, they'll keep working through the bumps to get in there. So I did mention roadmap. Here's the AKA link, or you should be able to just click that link directly and it'll take you to our public roadmap where we talk about things like, yes, we are having host interaction and interaction visibility, and I can't remember if we said room hop here. We definitely said it in a blog, so I know I'm okay to talk about that one. Guest access, as I mentioned, go back and reread that one because we did clarify the licensing there. We are working on whiteboards. I have actually done that in some of my events because I have access to some of the internal things. Audio zones, I'm going to be using a lot of audio zones in my Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month, and Sophia is helping me because she's the person on our team who does the audio PM. There is a new environment that's coming, not the one that I showed you with the workshop, but there's a whole new environment. I haven't actually even seen it yet. We are going to be adding Teams chat support in Mesh events. So that's something that I think is going to be, really, really helpful. And hand interaction on Quest. Workshop needs whiteboards. Yes, it does. So that's what I got. I think we still have a few minutes for questions, and I'm hanging out. I need to go and add one slide to my other presentation I'm doing in a minute here, so I'll stop sharing. But oh, actually, here we'll go to the final slide here. So rate the session, attend more, stick around, show the next one. Post all this stuff. Everything I posted is all public, is all totally okay to be talking about. And I'll give you these Mesh links here in the chat. The Mesh adoption page and Mesh docs are definitely where you want to start. So I will stop sharing, but I will take questions, and I'm just going to grab something to drink here and go add my other slide. But let me know if there's anything else you want to talk about.
Yeah. Any questions, you can come off mute. And I guess the next
so the workshops and Project Studio, yeah, they are not the same thing. We thought that at first too. They are definitely different.
Yeah.
And Maddie, I'll tell you, Maddie was one of my MVPs who came in and helped with the table topics I did in AltSpace in Mesh for Ignite 2021. That was how I first met Maddie.
It was years back, and
It was
it was
years
fun.
back, but
It was fun back then, but yeah,
it's gotten so much better now. And being, having the more integrated experience and all the micros, like having your accounts there. And yeah, once we get guest access, it's going to be even easier. And we'll talk more about that in the next session, because I want to talk about community and also explore ways that we might be able to use this to help grow community by using, the community tools.
yeah. Our next session is, of course, you can ask questions on the next session, so that's what it's for. And if anyone can come off mute and just, yeah, I guess
Hi,
there's,
Cathy. Hi,
Hi.
Cathy. Hi. I think one of the things that I'm largely missing with our company is, the education piece for our clients, because largely what happens is they understand some areas of uses that mesh could have for them, but I
Hmm.
think they don't really fully see the potential.
Yeah.
And therefore we feel that as a community we need to probably really go deeper into use cases together, maybe publish. I know I've been following a lot of the blogs and posts that you do, Kathy, and obviously also HoloLux doing a lot of stuff. But I think that there is still the need to really drill down, because it's so vast, the use cases. Like, so we're talking to a PR company where we're trying to pitch to them training and onboarding, but training and onboarding for them is a very different ball game than maybe for a manufacturing company, for example, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, there is a lot of different opportunities that can exist. I think we
Hmm.
just need to get together more and talk more about use cases.
Yeah. And that's, you know, I'm trying to kind of figure out where our community needs to be. So obviously there are great community events like this one. And once we get guest access, it's going to revolutionize events like this to be
Yeah,
able to
yeah,
say, hey, let's go do this session in Mesh is going to be totally
yeah.
different. So, it's a little bit of chicken and egg here. Um, uh, so we've got LinkedIn. I haven't been doing X so much since it became X, I admit. We've got a group that I'm going to talk about. I was just grabbing the picture of that one. There's XR for Work as a community in Facebook, and I
Hmm.
found some like-minded people in there. I think there's some good conversation, but it's still not enough of the kind of conversation I want to be having. Like, I really,
Right.
I've done communities of practice for all kinds of different things. In Intune, in Config Manager, our user groups were super strong there. I love my MVPs in there, and we had forums where we could go and be talking online about stuff, but I haven't really felt like we have a total lively conversation going about event design. And I
Yeah,
think that's where some of the use cases come. Now, I put the link in the bottom there about the mesh adoption page. So that is where I'm trying to distill all of my stuff. And there is one doc up there where it's like quick ideas for events. And I go through a lot of these kinds of UK. I just gave you a whole bunch of mine right here. And if you want to talk about more of them, like if somebody wants to set up a session and say, hey, we want you to come on LinkedIn Live and let's talk more about events, and we can bring people in and have more, it doesn't, I love Metaverse One, but it's once a year.
I
If we want
love
to do
that
this,
idea.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm really happy to be a resource for this. But the other thing that I've really found, I'll kind of drive this point home, is I can't do it all by myself. Like, I'm trying to get people to use this
agreed.
in Microsoft. I'm the broken record. If you've seen this show Red Dwarf, where they had this psychotic toaster. He's like, want some toast? Want some toast? I'm like, want some mesh? Want some mesh? Every time you
I
turn around,
get
my
that
group does.
feeling. That's what I do with my company most of the time. But
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but just to bring in another angle to this whole use case scenario, I feel
Hmm.
in this community we need cross-functional people. We need people from HR, for
Yes.
example, because they will tell you what kind of employee engagement that they want for it, right? We need marketing people in. So it shouldn't necessarily be people who are on the development side or
Yes.
on the event side, right? Because I'm both from the development and the event background, and I understand how both work. But then I see everything from my perspective. I don't see it really from the perspective of, let's say, a user in a large, distributed organization, for example, or the HR head, or the. So I think we need to start
Yes.
figuring out how to do that. We're happy to sort of get some of our friendly clients in on the community as well, but a place where we can actually have that conversation.
Yeah, and what I found for that is what's really been working is I have to find the allies first. I have to find the super users, the super fans, and in adoption circles, I think there's a special name for people like that. I forget what it is. But once I get those on board and they are totally into, okay, we want to use this, and then I can let them kind of drive and tell me about their space. So like the one I told you about where the scores were that much higher. We have someone who really believed in what we were doing. He's an awesome guy.
Yeah.
And so he was championing the work forward, and then we were just supporting him with the mesh. And then from that, we got other people in his org who said, "Oh, come and talk to us about this. Now we want to do this. How would we do this?" So you got to kind of
Right.
find those little bright points and then use those as the spreader events to start building up your network, your Facebook of here's all my success stories. And then you'll
Yeah.
be able to start selling them to the harder sells, but start just with the people who are really believers.
Yeah. And also get the community to share their success stories, because I
Yes.
think if Mesh grows, everybody grows, right? So I think
Yes.
that sort of spirit of collaboration needs to come through. There are, of course, a lot of these organizations. I'm from the advertising background, so I know there are these large advertising conferences which we could all be part of, right? Take in a Mesh module together, go and make a presentation, maybe do one session in Mesh for everyone. Just the fact that we are able to get people to see what it is, I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, definitely we need to talk more. So
Yeah,
so Pygmy,
later.
find me on
Sure,
LinkedIn.
sure.
I'll find you.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll
I,
throw
I'm
my
I'm
LinkedIn in
following
the
you on
chat.
LinkedIn. Yeah. All right.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know we're at time for the next one. So Maddie, do you want to do
Sure.
any kind of
No, no, I get that.
transition or?
Yeah.
I guess we just transition to the next one. I guess so fluently. So I didn't want to break up the good discussion. So I guess we can just continue.
Okay.
Do you have something to share, or do
Yeah, I
we
have a
just?
different deck for that one. So let me get that
Okay.
one.
All right. So let's move to the different to that one then. So, but good discussion. Maybe I need to switch over to my avatar. I just created it quickly because I'm on a different tenant and my avatars aren't following me. So.
Yes, the avatars don't follow. Obviously, something we would like to see, but
Oh
is that
yeah,
presenting yet?
yeah. Big thing that knows like 10 minutes is not going to happen in different tenants.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so I don't know if we have all the same people, if we have any new people who weren't in my last hour. So there were a few things that I was just gonna, kind of speed through here. But really what I'd love to have is more conversation. Is my screen presenting yet?
yeah, it's good.
I am not seeing anything. I'm gonna
But
stop. I'm gonna start
I'm
again. I just have a big white area in the middle of my screen here. So let's try this again. Present in Teams. Present in Teams. There we go. All right, now I see it. Yeah, Callahan, I know you want to spend more. So Callahan's been one of our faithfuls going back on this, and she's also been one of the people who's been with me since my alt space and other platform days. So, yeah, you find the people like her who are just really into it. Grow the communities by that. She's been taking it and running with it and doing all sorts of great things. And a lot of you, I can't see the whole list on here, but yeah, find your bright spots. So I just wanted to, for anybody who was not in the previous session, just cover briefly that what we have right now is 3 experiences that are branded as mesh. So the avatars, like Maddie, thank you, Maddie, his avatar. And it's not easy to find, but if you go up to the little 3-dot more button, then it'll have something, probably it says video effects and settings or avatars. There you go. So you can wave, he can do dab, you can do the robot kind of stuff. And what I find with that, when I use it personally, I have like, the best excuse in the world to show up to meetings as avatar form. But when I'm really listening and paying attention and not, folding my laundry, I'm sitting there. I actually bring up that little avatar panel, even though it's kind of a pain in the rear to get to. And I'll sit there and I will nod my head. I always have nod and shake my head as defaults there. And there are 2 kinds of nodding, and I can nod very vigorously. But I try to, really have some of those at the ready, because I want to let people know I really am here. I really am listening. Without having to even be off mute. I can still communicate non-verbally. And for me, that's something that really works well. And the cool thing is that we've now taken those same emotes like dab and robot dance. When you go into the immersive view in Teams, you actually can use those in addition to just, sending little smiles that kind of pop up, or, little hearts that pop up. You can actually make your avatar little heart hands. And I love things like that one. And then we also have the custom experiences that you can build. So you can add right now just images, text, videos, and screen shares. But we have announced that we will be allowing audio zones to be added. And so, you know, I can do things like have a little spatialized area over here, or I can have a cone of silence over here where only people inside that cone can hear each other. I love that. And, you know, so just licensing wise, if you go to AKMS Mesh licensing, that'll tell you everything as it develops. You know, if we have any changes, you know, Callahan was mentioning EDU earlier. We know people want that. When and if that's available, it would show up there in that licensing page. For Mesh itself, you need to either have Teams Premium, or there's a Teams Premium trial that's only 30 days, or you can get a Mesh trial that is 6 months. And I'll tell you, if you are using Mesh a lot in those 6 months and you're reaching the end and you haven't been able to work out the purchasing, talk to us. You know, I'm not saying I can't promise anything, but you know, we're looking for people who really want to make a commitment to Mesh. In fact, that's another, you know, piece of my job here is finding what we call lighthouse customers, people who are willing to really commit to driving adoption inside their environments. And if you are like that, please come find me on LinkedIn. I think I had it in the first thing there, but let me get my. This is how to find me, message me. Sorry. Okay, so that's Mesh. I talked about the design framework that I think about in the last section of, you know, if I'm doing an event, is it going to be more presentational where just one person is talking? That's maybe not the best use for Mesh. I tend to want to make things more on the international access, although just throwing them in without any help, especially till we reach that tipping point, is maybe not something that I want to do. Sometimes I'm doing my events that are in environments that have been completely built out, and the environment itself is the attraction and tells the story. Sometimes I'm in a blank room and I need to figure out a way to tell that story. Either, you know, just by adding things like I did our Women's History Museum, where I got people to create content and give it to me, and then, you know, we put it up around a space. And you know, so I can do, I can even do something without any customizations to a room at all. But usually, you know, going towards a sweet spot, some customization, some agenda. I don't necessarily have to have any presentation. I can do things that are just on the interactional, but I probably at least want to include things like signage and verbal directions to people so they know what to do. And so, you know, I've run these events. You know, so I was talking with Puneet in the last section, kind of spilling into this one about what he's trying to accomplish there. And, you know, really, I just want to talk to people who are running events because I think there's so much that we can share about best practices. And I've taken all of my best practices, I've put them up on our Mesh adoption site. And so you can go there and you can see all the stuff that I've been doing. And the best practice that I recommend, like I have a greeter guide, and we were getting ready to do the Women's History exhibit, and it was just like an open-ended exhibit. We didn't have any presentation at all on that, you know, interactional access, but we did have greeters. And so I sat down and thought, okay, what is it that I do when I'm greeting new people in an event? And that's my brain dump, folks. This is, you know, Cathy's process. I am not saying that is the best and the only way to do it. What I would really love is say, hey, let's get some people who have run some events in Mesh or even in other platforms. You know, I really believe in the rising tide here. If you're doing events on Frame, which I think is a fantastic platform, Engage, you know, platforms are great. Let's get together, let's talk about it. And each platform may have some of its peculiarities about how you greet, but let's talk about, you know, what are the best ways to get people at ease? How are we going to get people to that tipping point? And how do you think about design framework for your events? Because I think there's a really rich discussion area here. So one of the places that we can get together and talk is our tech community. I find this is very chicken and egg. You know, it's like you got to have people starting the conversation, people listening to the conversation, people replying to the conversation. So, you know, starting these things up is kind of like starting a good party. Like, how do you get the right people and the right kind of stuff happening in the room there? So, so our creators forum is fairly active. That is where we have people who are actually doing the building, who are using Unity. But, you know, it could also just be creating, you know, like I mentioned in our last session, we had our admin who did this fantastic one with aliens and Aurora Borealis and space as the theme. So, we could say creators is also doing the no code creation, and we could be talking there. There is a virtual events and webinars forum that Mesh absolutely fits into, but we haven't really had any conversation going there about Mesh. I do try to check that every day. Actually, I try to check both of them every day and just see what's happening. But, it's like, how are we going to get that ignition point where we get people going and talking somewhere? I don't really even care where it is. Like tech community, this is one place we could be going and talking together. We also have our MVPs who are specifically endorsed in Mesh, which is not to say that that people like Maddie are not. Yeah, I don't know, Maddie, if you're out there doing it. This is people who are reviewed and said, yeah, they are doing enough Mesh to kind of qualify. So if you go up to mvp.microsoft.com, if you are interested in being an MVP, I can speak briefly. I am not the person who manages the Mesh MVPs at this time, but I did manage the MVPs for Intune Configuration Manager, the whole endpoint management space for many years. It's one of my best jobs ever. I love those people. And also the Windows commercial section of people using Windows for Enterprise. And I love the MVP program. It's lasted, gosh, I think over 30 years at Microsoft. It's, huge longevity. And it's really been instrumental in helping recognize, yeah, these are people who are really doing it. And so Microsoft puts like a seal of approval on these people to say they're doing the kind of thing that we want to see more of in the community. And the range of community expression can be huge. I used to tell my Intune and ConfigMan MVPs, look, I don't care if you are going out there and doing interpretive dance. If you can do that and show me how it is helping move the needle for people to understand and use Intune and Configuration Manager better, that's great. You have to do enough of it. Just doing like a blog post a couple times a year isn't going to get you there. What I looked for on my Intune and ConfigMan MVPs was sustained action over the course of a year. And even for new MVPs, it can be kind of hard to get in if you don't have, 6 months maybe for a product like this is new. I don't know what the current bar is that we're looking for time-wise, but you really want to have consistent activity over a period of time and show how you are leading, show how you are moving the needle on things. What kind of conferences are you speaking at? What kind of blog posts are you doing? What kind of readership are you getting on your blog posts? It can be great. You can go out there and doing, oh yeah, Nicole's moderator, great. Christian Clement, they're fantastic MVPs. And this is not to say these are the only ones. But, you could go out and you could do 25 YouTube videos. And if they have like combined viewership of 10 people, like, well, where are you moving the needle? So part of being an MVP is being very vocal. And I know sometimes people are like, oh, I'm kind of an introvert. It's hard for me to go and do that. And gosh, I can go dig it up. We had a fantastic presentation by Crystal. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on her last name. She and her husband are both MVPs, or at least they were. I don't know if they still are. I haven't talked to her in a while. And she did this fantastic presentation for the Women IT Pro series that I used to run about why you need to be involved in the community. And it was targeted primarily at women, but I say it's everyone. And one of the things that we tend to find, especially among women, but not exclusively, is that say, well, I don't really have anything unique to say. It's all been said. And the thing is, it hasn't been said by you. So I have, my huge long list of events that I have run. But the way that I run my trivia contest and my watch party is not going to be the way that Puneet runs trivia and watch parties, or Callahan runs trivia and watch parties. So, by bringing that together, and sharing that, the idea is called Learn Out Loud. And we talk about that. There's a Women of Teams group. And as soon as we get guest access, I will make sure that we do one of our Women of Teams in a guest way that I can bring people into that one. It doesn't have to just be women, doesn't just have to be teams, but Mesh is part of teams. So, hey, how we can bring people together to be doing this. And somebody at the last meeting was talking about Learn Out Loud. So like I as I'm learning how to do all this Unity stuff, I am documenting it. At some point, I'll get around to sharing that. If you want my early drafts, I can share my early drafts with you. It's like how we can just, build more people talking to each other is what I want to do. So MVPs are a great way, and the field is ripe right now. To get to be an MVP, you want to show that you're having that influence. There are just a few people here. If you go and look at something like SharePoint or Teams, just like basic, the regular part of Teams, there's a ton of stuff. It still doesn't mean that you can't talk about it, because your viewpoint on it is going to be different. So I talked about guest access. So let me dive in a little bit more about guest access, and then we can talk about, ways that we might want to start using this. And I see a couple comments in the chat on the back too. So Mesh allows for better collaboration, different types of collaboration by supporting guest access. So invite guest users outside their organization. And down below it says guest user creation follows, I get my laser pointer back here. Guest user creation follows the existing process for tenant guest user creation outside of Mesh. So for example, we have our technical adoption program for Mesh, and Vesa is a member of that one. So he gave me his account that he wanted added. I'm one of the people who does like the technical maintenance of that one. And I was able to add him into our Teams channel. And either he was already a guest, which I know he was because, MVP, he had an account that had other guest access, or if he hadn't been set up before, that would have made him a guest of the Microsoft tenant. So I can actually go to entra.microsoft.com and bring up the Entra ID, and I could go and see Vesa's guest account. I can see my own account. Anybody who has a guest account in there, sometimes I've had problems with the guest accounts and I've had to go and check on them, and I'll see, oh, that account has been disabled for some reason. And then I have to file a support ticket internally at Microsoft to say, please go enable this account. So, it's just guest access like any other kind of guest access going on for now. Anonymous will be supported at a future update. So we're getting there. That is, but we're not saying in October of 2024 we'll have anonymous access. October 2024, it's going to be that guest access. And then the other thing is, we added this afterwards. I didn't want there to be any confusion. It requires a Teams premium license, or it can be the Mesh trial license as well, just so long as they have some kind of license. So I know that's going to put a crimp on things. I talked a lot about event design in the last one and how I think about, creative constraints. It's a creative constraint. I have some ideas for how I want to approach this, including for things like I want to do a watch party for all of our MVPs who are not physically adding, or even if they are physically adding, but come and watch it in Mesh and be able to talk about it together. Because I worked on in Brad Anderson's org for endpoint management and some other things. I used to have to coordinate all of the delegation that he was sending, and he sent a lot of people to Ignite. And so, I have experience at big events. I'm not saying I ran all of Ignite, but I definitely ran some of that. I told you in the other session, I think I talked about running just some Teams live events after COVID hit, where we did a 24-hour marathon of Intune content around the world and some AMAs, and and it was all free. We're all able to do it just by ourselves, and it was all guest access. It was all promoted just by us. We had no official Microsoft marketing, building out there. So, so I think about this guest access and how I'm gonna, be able to bring people in here. And there are definitely ways that I'm gonna be able to do it. Committed to this one. Let me go back to see what we got in the questions here. Okay, so Richard says, I added a 6-month trial. Yes. Testing with Quest 3. Yes. When I try to join meetings via Mesh on Quest or switch to immersive view, unable to join, failed to get Teams. That is not something that is related to licensing, but what I'm going to ask you to do is file feedback, because I'm not going to be able to help you, even in this limited time here. But it really sounds like one of those things that is a problem. So in our help topics on learn.microsoft.com, we have one that is feedback and support, and this is super important. Callahan knows I'm a broken record on this one. If you don't file it as feedback, we can't go and get the log files to troubleshoot it and figure out what exactly was going on. So if you file feedback, and you can come and tell me what the tenant name is, like the @microsoft.com name, ping me on LinkedIn, and I can go and find that feedback and make sure somebody takes a look at it. So Richard, I'm making that offer to you. Go try again, file the feedback, and then tell me the tenant name that you were filing it from, and I can go look that up. And if you don't remember what your feedback was titled, you can actually go, we have a feedback portal site. I'll put the link in the chat later. You can go see all the feedback that you have filed on Mesh or any other Microsoft product. It actually collects it all in one place for you. That was part of the whole privacy thing that I got to work on a few years ago. Okay, Teams premium license requirement for guests in their home organization or the guest account in the tenant. Good question. It is in their hosting organization. So if I wanted to do one with ilovemesh.com, Christian's HoloLux tenant, if he created an account in there and gave it a Teams license, and that account had guest access in Microsoft.com, I would be able to have those people attend my event.
So Cathy, so it's the home
Yes.
tenant. So it's basically person's home tenant because
Yes.
yeah. Okay. The hosting I was meaning about that would be like like you are creating the event at Microsoft tenant. We have guests. We are there as guests, and so. But it makes sense. It's the home tenant because
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
the
that's
other
my
one is.
understanding. I'm going to go check on that just to be sure, because there's so many little intricacies in this.
Yeah. Yep. I can guess that because there's in guest access there's sometimes if you want to have like more conditional accessing or something like, you would have to put some extra licenses for the guest account. But so it's good to have some kind of clearance about which one this is. Hopefully it is the whole like a home tenant. So if the user has the license on it on his home tenant, then he can join as a guest. That would be ideal, of course.
Yeah, that is my understanding, but I will go and verify that, because I don't want to be, and for my own events that I'm planning to run, I've got to know that, because I've got to make sure I can do it.
Yeah, excellent. Or of course, the ideal would be without licenses, but that's the next best step.
Okay, so I put the feedback portal in there. I mean, I wish it was free. Well, it's free for 6 months. Try it and build the use case for it. And, see if you can get people on board to use it. And you got all my adoption materials to help with that one. So the other option is Microsoft has this community tenant. Now, when I went to look at it, it looks like it's saying join the waitlist now instead of join. So they may have a little bit of slowdown, and I haven't talked to them, but I might have some ideas why that is happening. But there is a tenant that is owned and licensed and is used by all different user groups. So if you have an Intune user group and you wanted, in fact, one of my Intune MVPs was one of the first people to host an event in here during COVID, the Workplace Ninja Summit in Switzerland. So Mirko, he was able to get in that tenant. He was able to run his whole event in Teams using that tenant without having to buy licenses and all of that. Now, the way that they set that tenant up is like Mirko, as the organizer, was given a license in that Teams tenant. Those licenses actually include Teams Premium now, is my understanding. So that, he could host a standalone mesh event in there, but until we get the guest access and until we get guest access, and have all the licensing worked out, that could still be a barrier. But if you already have an account on that tenant and you wanted to host an event and you have other people who have licenses in October, you'll be able to do that. And then as we expand that, you'll be able to host your events there. So I would say, get on the wait list if you aren't already in there, if you want to start running events, and then when they start opening that up again or have space, then you'll be able to hop in there and start using that to host mesh events that people can come to. Is there any Copilot in mesh? Not yet, not officially. We do have some AI that we talked about at Build, and I'll put a link to that in the chat. So it's some interesting stuff. Actually, I'll just put it from the docs because I'm right there. Mesh. Go. Develop environments. So this is our Mesh 201 tutorial, and that has some AI that is built in. We can't brand it Copilot because there's specific requirements about what can be branded Copilot, but everyone at Microsoft, it's basically one of those things where even if you don't work on Copilot, you work on Copilot now. It's all about Copilot. So it's coming. If you have thoughts about what you want to see in Copilot, please feel free to add that in the chat. I can pass that along to the people who are working on that one. But yeah, it'll get there. It's all going to come together. Okay, so we have the community tenant, and then this is kind of the last point that I wanted to make. I talked about this in the previous session. There is an XR for Work community I met Rick Castile back even before he used to have a VR for work, and then they transformed it so XR, meaning extended reality, like all the different modes, augmented reality, etc., but using it for professional context. So we have had some of that discussion over there, and I would love to see more happening there if people want to start driving conversation there. Hi, Holger. This is a really great place that I recommend, and feel free to start throwing stuff out there. But if there are other places that you know about, other places that we can be hanging out and having conversations besides some of these places, I'll just, kind of jump to the thank you slide because it has the docs and the adoption page on there one. Okay, that's a talk to, John Campbell talked about AI guides in Mesh. Okay, upcoming in the future, thank you. The keynote was shown at midnight and I did not get a chance to get access to the recording. I thought that would have been good, but too late. So yeah, what John says, obviously he is our leader of the Mesh product area. So what he says is stuff that can be talked about publicly as well. But yeah, we think definitely there will be AI guides. So thinking about using avatars on Teams meetings, cool to pull reaction controls to a separate window and use the touch screen. I know. I have heard of people taking, so there are different mixer board kind of things that you can use, like for podcasting, where you can push a button and you can map controls to it. So people have absolutely done that with Mesh reactions. So, so that's a possibility. What I do when I'm in a meeting, I told you, sometimes I'm kind of sitting on my reaction buttons and trying to, just show people I'm engaged and feel more engaged myself, is I open my Teams chat in another window so I can still see the Teams chat. Or sometimes I'll have it on my phone, depends on if I want to type. If I want to type, I just open another window on my PC, and then I can just be leaving my avatar window there so I can be clicking on the reactions.
Yeah, but
how about legs? Go ahead.
The avatar, the reaction window is too small. You cannot get everything there.
I know.
Bigger button on Surface Pro screen would be awesome, actually.
It would be. It would be.
Maybe.
For the avatar question, I'm just going to refer you back to our FAQ. We have a FAQ in there that explains why our avatars don't have legs. And I know people tend to react about it at first. Usually once people start using it, we kind of get past the leg thing, even though it is, like a first hot take on it. Another question we had during the session, any word about camera controlled reactions in Mesh? So that I think that falls into, we do not have it on the public roadmap, but if you think about it, it seems an obvious idea. And if it's an obvious idea for you. So, and I'll also say that, Microsoft, it's very important for us to have things that work well. So yes, it's a fantastic idea, but if it does not work well, it is creepy as heck, and it's not going to be a good thing. So, is that good enough? Let's see. I'd love to have some key combos for my top 5 reacts. You can pin your top 5 in the little avatar window, but you still have to dig down to get to it. And I'm in a bunch of Teams early rings. Hopefully you are not having this, but I get mine reset all the time because it's clearing some cache stuff, and so I have to keep going and repinning my things. I don't think that happens outside of my inner ring issues here. But yeah, I definitely have the top 5. One of the keyboards I worked on at Microsoft was going to be a Legend morphing keyboard. So it would have OLED little key caps on it so that you could change the letters, you could change to international layouts, and you could even do things like I had to go and play EverQuest as part of my thing, because we were talking about how you would map gaming macros to this morphing keyboard. So I just, every time I think about that, I think about, yeah, Mesh would be great. I could have all my avatar reactions when I'm in a meeting and just have them come up on my OLED keyboard. Yeah, clicking slows down the reacts, definitely. Yeah. The other thing that I'll say about camera tracking of avatars, and so that does exist in things like the Quest Pro has it. So we were in Horizon's workroom event, and my teammate Eric had the Horizon Pro, or the Mesh Quest Pro, and he was making a sandwich, and we could actually see his hands moving as he was making his sandwich. So we also have to think about, well, how do you get the appropriate actions, but if you're doing inappropriate things, make sure your camera's not capturing that. This is laughing. So, that's really what I've got in terms of the content here, and we still have some time in this hour. And if people come off mute, are we allowed to just have people talk or type, whatever you want to do?
Yeah, we can allow them, unmute them. Okay, let's.
So it is being recorded.
Actually,
You know, if you're going to unmute,
yeah,
know that it's it's going to be.
yeah, I can unmute.
Talk to me about it, Puneet. I know we were having some great conversation before we segued into the session. Happy
Yeah.
to pick that up.
Yeah, actually, I feel there is so much to talk about, and specifically on the, I think I understand that there's a roadmap. I understand this is an evolving product. I'm not really worried about feature here and there. I'm really sort of more focused on how to get our clients to get their first experience in, and
Yes.
also largely to get their first experience to be positive in terms of user experience more than in terms of, because we've run virtual events in 3D environment 3-4 years back, where the biggest problem was really the user experience, the lag, the constant breakdown of things, etc. One of the things that I feel extremely excited about is the fact that it is Microsoft, which, and I think you mentioned this, Kathy, in your last session as well. The whole concept of, having security in terms of data, in terms of GDPR. We ran into
Yes.
huge problems with GDPR. We had 3-4 really good clients and prospective communications, but we just couldn't get past, some very basic conversations. Especially Europe is, extremely difficult to crack.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I feel, it's a, more than a question. This is really an observation. I think it's an exceptional product, specifically because we have security built in, because we have, the safety of knowing that it's Microsoft. I know things will basically keep evolving, and the pace has been exceptional over the last few months, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's just that we need our clients to start, we're even going in saying, do a pilot with us and then, build from there. So
Yeah, what I
I
find, and I brought up our adoption page, so you can see
mm,
some of the content in here. And so you have three little things over here. So this is some of the stuff you can get for leadership. This Microsoft Mesh, a new way to connect. I'm going to rename that soon. That's going to be the Mesh pitch deck. It is the Mesh pitch deck. And some of the slides that I used for today were taken directly from that. So feel free to
great.
use that presentation. That has a bunch of video demos in it, so you can show off the whole product without, and it had that slide about the security and everything. That was from that deck. So that's a really good way to start. And it includes, this is just a video, and that is nested inside of this deck. And then we have some of the public use cases that we've been able to talk about, including avatar etiquette and bonding in 3D here. These are both ways that we have been using these technologies internally that we were able to write about. This is the World Economic Forum. We have several other blogs, like our product announce blog talks about companies like Takeda that have been using it in a big way internally. And then over here on the user enablement side, we have a bunch of things. So designing your mesh event. This is my design deck that I run through as I think about, all the pieces that I want to make sure that I remember, so I don't miss anything as I'm putting stuff together. Common event scenarios. Actually, that's from the learn.microsoft.com. Right now, it's under, I think, guides for mesh events. I'm going to reorganize this slightly, but I have like some quick ideas to get started with mesh. And the thing that I stress in that document is you want to get people talking to each other. Like for me, my core event design, when I get people in, whether it's in the Teams immersive view or we're doing something standalone, I try to make sure people are going to have small group conversations, either one-on-one or, groups of 2, 2, 3, 4 at the max. And another thing that we have up there, it's underneath the guides for immersive spaces in Teams. There's actually a little lesson plan that was written by someone on our team who was a teacher before she came to Microsoft. And so it's like if you wanted to go and run a little lesson on, hey, we're going to go into Mesh. What is Mesh? Then we go into Mesh. We do some group bonding activities in Mesh, playing one of my favorite games in there. And then come out and talk about the experience. That's all written down there. But you'll find your own. You kind of like get your little beats together, and then you get used to bringing people in, but you got to have the one-to-one conversation, or small group. If you don't have the small group conversation, just stay in Teams.
I think conversation also reason, Kathy, for people to come back. So one of the things that I've realized is that I don't want to pitch to clients for a one-off event because there is a learning curve that the users also need to go through. And I think the learning curve should build over, more recurring usages rather than one-off usage. So, maybe building, a training module which gets them to come every week for an hour, versus doing a single town hall. I think so. Some of those things are important. Maybe get the younger maybe build the first use case for the younger audience in an organization, for example. And that's where I feel training onboarding for,
Yes,
kids who are just joining in, and I'm saying kids, but basically,
new hires.
yeah. So largely, this is the evolution from, let's say a Roblox or a, Fortnite experience for people who are
Minecraft.
already living their lives in these platforms. So, if we get those guys in and they become the, real champions within the organizations, I think, it's a way to look at it.
And I just want to make one little modification in thinking here. I say that mesh has a learning bump, not a learning curve. A
Huh.
curve, kind of implies it's progresses up. It really is a speed bump.
Right.
Once I get people over that and they're in, it's great. And so there's definitely got to be a tipping point where you get enough people in your organization that you don't need to stop. So the Hispanic Heritage event that I'm going to run on the 25th, I actually have a space where I can start people in a separate room. We're going to use our separate audio zones that we put on the roadmap in there, so that I can just have the orientation going on. Then we can send them out of that room into the event. Eventually, maybe next year, maybe 2 years, I don't know how long it's going to take till we get to that tipping point. I'll just be able to have people just, pop right into the event. That's not going to be a problem. But we went through the
Yeah.
same bump with things like Teams Live events, both presenting
Mm.
and attending Teams Live events. At first, it was like, wait, what is this? This is different.
Right. And you're saying conversation is the most important thing, getting people
Yes.
in and making them have a conversation with each other.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one of
Interesting.
the best and worst events that I went to, it was in alt space, but the SharePoint 20th anniversary party had the best agenda I have ever seen from any community event, because it was COVID. We were all stuck at home. They could get everybody. And hundreds of people showed up for that. And I could tell that they were new because, as somebody mentioned, they all had the default avatar, and we could tell they were on PC because their hands were stuck at their sides. So they had this great opportunity to show off alt space, but they didn't let us talk to each other until the very end. We were all on forced mute. And so I could see
Right.
people on Twitter saying, hey, I see you over by the popcorn machine. Haven't seen you in a while. How are you? And it's like if they just unmuted between segments and let us talk to each other, would have been totally
Right.
different. And then at the end, they also gave us snowballs, and we were able to have a snowball fight, something you can't do in Teams. And so that was brilliant. So that, I think, just showcases the idea that, yeah, Teams does what it does really well. Don't mess with that. And sometimes I will even do events in Teams and then do a separate, and okay, now we're all going to go into mesh. Now I always lose people when that happens. Some people wander off, whatever. Some people don't want to come in, but it's
Right.
another approach to things.
Mm. So in terms of support, Kathy, and I'm sorry, if anybody else has a question, they can take over. But this is my last bit I want to ask you. So in terms of support, when we do, so there are two sides to the support that we, sort of look forward to from, Microsoft as well as the community. One is, helping close the conversations that we're having with businesses, and we can have a separate discussion on that with you.
Okay.
I'm also talking to Brandon from your team, so maybe
Oh, great.
we can
Okay.
figure that. Yeah.
Awesome.
But also, I think the larger thing is when we do bring a client on board, for us to be able to, get the support to handhold and make sure the adoption happens. Because I think for me, it's not a one-off adoption. So I don't want to just make the money once I deliver the first thing to them, right? So I think what is what is the strategy that you have? Brandon's been very supportive, so I get he's saying that, bring me on calls if you want me to be there, etc. as well. So, but are there
Yeah,
any sort of, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have the magic bullet. I have been talking with some adoption experts in the field who've been working. We're also in kind of a weird vacuum situation right now where I mentioned Copilot, that everyone at Microsoft works on Copilot, even if you don't work on, well, Copilot's sucking up all the oxygen. So like all the adoption teams, they're all working on Copilot. People that we have been working with closely in our Mesh Technical Adoption Program, you know, for years, it's like they get to the point of rolling out, oh, wait, all our research, we just had a reorg, now everybody's working on Copilot. And out of that, we've still had some people who've been able to hold on the Mesh, but even they're usually working on both Mesh and Copilot. So, you know, trying to get adoption people to, you know, to help us think about that strategy. So like at least getting the foot in the door that I found works is you find, you know, the small things that work well, you know, you show success, you can build your case studies, but I haven't been able to go much beyond that. You know, I know there are people, you know, we talked about Accenture publicly, so I can say that, yeah, they use that for their employee onboarding, and they run lots of their employee onboarding, and it's fantastic. We're, you know, we're sort of, but I don't even know what they've been able to drive, you know, beyond that. So, you know, they got their one thing that they are running repeatedly. So, you know, you want to look for those work streams, and I have a couple work streams that now we've got, you know, kind of, yeah, we're running this, and this is what we do in Mesh. But you know, we haven't gotten to that tipping point yet, and that's what we want help with.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I think your, you know, the resource that you just shared, communities like this, you know, sessions like this, I think these are extremely critical for us to have these open conversations. And I think, you know, your LinkedIn initiatives, Brandon's help with, you know, our initial, you know, pitches to our clients, etc. I think they've been really exceptional. So I'm hoping this will really come through.
Yeah, I think some of it, you know, our boss was saying for a long time is it's hand-to-hand combat. You know, we just got to go out and find the people, and eventually we'll get that tipping point. But
agreed. Yeah.
Anyone else want to jump in?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, and we don't have your construction outside.
Yes, and I have a short window. Those guys went to lunch.
Okay.
Water main broke right outside my house, so I haven't been able to participate at all until just now, and I don't know when they're coming back.
Okay, so be quick.
Yeah, so you know that I have been passionate about this since Allspace.
Absolutely.
So this has been years. I jumped on the public preview as soon as I could. I'm largely focused on Teams immersive spaces. I am also doing Mesh, and I too have jumped into using Unity and customizing, and you know, it's great. I've been doing it. I'm fascinated by lighting and audio layering right now, but but above that, something that I have seen with the groups that I bring in to Teams immersive spaces, and by extension Mesh, but it's mostly Teams immersive spaces because that's where they are.
Yep.
I rebelled against the 16 people limit a lot. It caused me frustration. I know the Unity files on other platforms can support 50, but then as I have been using it over time, I have realized that it's a little bit like herding cats without the tools that you would need for education. When you said we don't have the management tools right now, that really resonated with me because yes. But adults can be kind of like kids when they first get in there. They're running around, they're making noise, they're bumping into things. It is good to have that limit of 16 until everybody knows how to behave and you can manage them. So I'm fine with that, insofar as that's what we have right now. But I do honestly need additional tools. I really do. I would love to have a place where I could ask for things like, is there a way to have a user who's struggling to control themselves, help them back into gallery view so they are not running around madly in the Teams immersive space. I also would love, you know, the additional host tools. Is there any chance they might be working on those?
You know, I can't comment on anything that's not on the public roadmap. So
okay, gotcha. All right. Well, I have asked formally.
Yep, you've asked
in the public
yep,
space.
and yep, definitely feedback that is noted.
But I am having a great time bringing people in. I am excited about the fact that you guys are really ramping up your changes. I'd love to see them outside of preview because a lot of my clients are not on the public preview, path. So
We'll get there. You just gotta,
yeah, because and specifically the camera, the setting up your avatar with the camera and not doing it manually. Some people just aren't natural to it. They get frustrated. But I have to say that I'm sure there were technical reasons as to why you only had 16 people per meeting, but I'm actually finding that to be a sweet spot for having groups come in and master being in an immersive space as an attendee. It's hard to manage people beyond 16. So mea culpa, I was frustrated with 16 and now I'm not. I just felt like I needed to say that to someone that maybe that was wise.
Yeah. Anyone else have similar experiences or something else you want to talk about?
I have millions of things to talk about, but I don't know if this is the useful place to make this a Callahan show.
Well, and so one thing I'll say that I really love, Callahan, about the events you've been doing is trying to bring people in. You have expanded, and even with the inconvenience of not being able to just do unlicensed guests in there, you've done amazing work in bringing people in. Christian's been doing great work with the I Love Mesh tenant. If there's anyone else doing it, I would love to know about them and be able to support them however I can, because so I'm a community person from way back. Let's see, when I first started as a Microsoft certified trainer, we had the old NNTP news groups.
Yes, we did. I was there.
Yeah, Callahan was part of that.
And Doug. Yep.
Yeah, we had the evil MCT click and everything, and I was connected with people all around the world as part of that community, and it became so important to me that it's something that I've carried through. So for me, building a strong mesh community, it's not my official job at Microsoft to help grow the community, but I don't care. I do community, it's like breathing for me.
I totally get it. I totally get it. And as a matter of fact, that's kind of what I'm seeking amongst my varied groups that I'm kind of trying to pull together and introduce to each other. The MCTs, the VR chat people, the alt space people, the people from LinkedIn, anybody interested, because something about meetings that's really important to me is that we meet as a group. I've been doing over the years isolated, I'll get you people together and let's run through mesh in Teams immersive spaces, and then I'll get this group in, and then I'll get that group in. But trying to get them all together is difficult for me because I have to pay for the licensing, and that trial is only 6 months. I'm running out, and then that's a big bump for me to pay for all of that to get them all together. But I want them in there. You can see their excitement. They begin to own it. They get familiar with the environments. They get familiar with their avatars. They really do enjoy it. And I've been customizing spaces and bringing them in now. And the excitement of what have I made, come see my changes, that's really great. But I am seeking that same NNTP group we had so long ago. I'm still chasing it, and I'm still building those. Yeah. And it is expensive for me as an individual. I am not a corporation, but it's worth it. And we have all kinds of little games, and it's very interactive. And the need to have the microphones open is great. But I have dozens of little tool improvements that I really need for Teams immersive spaces and mesh for it to really, really work casually with everyone as a host and as users. And some of them pull directly from AltSpace, I'm not going to lie. Once I got used to those, I want them again. But so many things. And I would love to join you on an adoption page where we can get the world into one place to do mesh. That would be awesome. Just point and I'll go there.
Well, and like I was saying earlier with mesh in general, I need people who are as enthusiastic as I am, who are going to say, okay, I'm going to go do this. I'm like, I will support the heck out of you, but I can't scale driving it all myself. That was the lesson I learned very hard and early on within Microsoft is, I can't push women of E&D to go have another event if there isn't somebody in there
Right.
who's saying, we should go do another event. And I'm like, great, I'll help you do another event, because then I can scale.
Right. But I'm doing it. I'm driving it and doing it because somebody has to. And if no one is, I have to. You know what I mean? So I'm out here sometimes kind of feeling alone. I'm sure that Vesa and Christian and the others kind of feel the same way in our own lanes. But I get the impression this is going to take off, that I'm just prior to the spark moment.
Yeah, we
You
haven't hit
know,
the tipping point yet.
Right. I am just laying groundwork. And so I'm trying to create that. But it is sort of these tools that I need are while we keep hitting. And after a while, it can create disinterest. So I'll keep asking. I'll keep asking. And if you have good places for me to go ask, I will. Because if we had these tools, man, I'm telling you, this would be easier to do. That's all.
But I go back to the design constraints. Okay, I don't have a megaphone if I'm doing a Teams immersive space. I know that
Right.
gets me. What I have to do is I go back to my old, when my daughter was growing up, it's like, okay, everybody raise hand. And I tell people before I send them out, before I even take them into mesh, before we go, I say, don't go past the purple zone while I'm still talking. Then when I send them past the purple zone, I say, okay, when I raise my hand, everybody else raise your hand. And that's the signal that we're going to come back into the purple zone.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah, I have with Teams, you can do the chat. Just make sure everybody has the chat up. But you
That's
can't do
too,
that
yeah.
in mesh, and that's great.
But in
But
mesh, I have the
also,
megaphone.